Welcome into Rob Wright's Gen X Pop Culture. And on today's episode, we're going to talk about another Star Trek movie, Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. And with me is one of my special guests, Auntie Derivative Jill. How are you today,
I'm
Jill?
doing wonderful. I love this movie so much, and it this does what it has to do when following Wrath of Khan.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, the reason why I like this film so much is I think it's a good bookend to Wrath of Khan, which was my personal favorite Star Trek movie. And a lot of people think it's one of the best ones. I also we had this point in time we had the new Star Trek 10-minute creation that came out, which is Unification, which involved William Shatner and members of Leonard Nimoy's family, and just a really well done, beautiful ode to Star Trek fans, which is something we've been dying for a long time. And seeing that film reminded me of all the Star Trek movies that I watched as a kid, particularly this movie, because it dealt with the death of Spock in that and in this, and so I thought it had some of the same themes, and I wanted to pull out and review it for my channel. So I don't know if you had the same thoughts or your thoughts on that.
It definitely seemed really that it did focus a lot on life and how friendships coordinate with that. And
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll
that
be
short,
talking. Go ahead.
yeah, that short was poetic. I'm not
Mhm.
sure what I think of it though yet. The AI is a little strange to me.
Oh yeah, I agree. I thought they had the makeup and the AI was the way to do it, to where it's not like fully CG or fully done that way. Um, I do feel that it left out some dialogue, which is seen in this movie. I have been and always shall be your friend. Felt like that should have been in that
Yeah, the
short.
dialogue is everything.
Hmm.
Especially when bringing in all the characters. Mr. Scott, have you always multiplied your repair estimates by a factor of 4?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's a great line. I love that. I love that, and that's one of the great parts. This one was well written with some of that dialogue too. Um, but as we go on, we're going to tell you about some interesting facts about this movie. Um, it had some real interesting stuff around the shooting of it. And then we're going to talk about some of the themes, which you just kind of touched on briefly. And then we're going to show you some slides and talk about our favorite scenes and kind of laugh and tell you why this movie is a fun adventure movie. And to be honest, I think it's one of the shorter running Star Trek movies. But it's really well paced, probably one of the best paced movies out there. So, all right, let's get into some of the facts. One of the things that Star Trek is known for, which I love, is they always try to tie something to uh, NASA, the United States Space Program. And one of the nods to NASA in this film was the USS Grissom, which was the ship that was exploring Genesis, was named after Gus Grissom, the second man in space, and he was an astronaut that perished in an accident on Pad B when they were doing a training mission for more of the Apollo missions to the moon. And it was really good that he got that recognition because uh, everybody had felt that he didn't get the recognition, the fame he deserved as the second man in space. He had some problems with the landing, and that caused some difficulty. But I'm glad that they did that and that they named it after Gus Grissom. And I always love the nods to NASA. Jill, do you have another couple of facts too?
Oh, a couple of facts. Oh, I got lots of facts, but let's see which ones would be the best ones to share is the question. I maybe I should have prepared.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. I can give another one if you
Um,
want to look through
oh,
yours.
I do know, of course, Leonard Nimoy was
Oh
directed
yeah.
this one. He asked to direct it since Nicholas Meyer decided he didn't want Spock to come back because what was the whole point of having the last movie?
Hmm.
And Leonard Nimoy wanted to be Spock again, and they allowed him to direct. And he actually originally wanted Edward James Olmos, but as Kruge, as the Klingon,
Hmm.
but apparently he was too short, and Leonard Nimoy says, "We could use some movie magic to make him taller." but they wouldn't allow that to happen. They nixed that, and so that's how we got
Christopher Lloyd.
Christopher Lloyd as yeah.
Yep. Doc Brown himself before he was Doc Brown. Um, Another note that I have was really interesting, and I never realized this, but there was a great fire at Paramount Studios during the shooting of this, and William Shatner helped fight the fires and rescue crew members before reinforcements arrived.
Yes, and he was in full Kirk costume and makeup when he was helping with that fire.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that aspect of it. Wow. He said that his motivation for doing this was to save a day of shooting. And also, at the time, he was doing some double duty with the TV show TJ Hooker, which is a fun show. I watched it as a kid, always liked it. Um, so, wow. I mean, just a real life hero doing that. I mean, I don't know many actors or many people that would put themselves in harm's way to help firefighters and help rescue other people like that. That's amazing. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's incredible that he went above and beyond the Call of Duty as an actor to do that, and just to keep everything going because so many sets were in danger.
Mhm. Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, and the sad thing is, in several movies, you don't realize how many different tragedies and fires. I mean, we were talking about. I did a video on Legend, and during Legend, part of their set caught on fire and it burned the whole studio down in London. And that was a big major studio that they had, and it just burnt to a crisp. But fortunately, nobody was hurt, nobody died. But my goodness, some of these big productions have had their share of accidents, and this movie is no stranger to that. Another cool aspect about this film, which I thought was interesting, was did you know who the original villains were supposed to be?
The original villains were supposed to be the Romulans, and that is why Leonard Nimoy kept saying, "Let's make the bird of prey," and it just they ended up having to redress everything for Klingons.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think that's interesting. I think the Klingons made a little bit better villain or more familiar villain at the time, but it's interesting the way the Romulans could have been used in this. I thought it was also interesting. Remember, they always explained it how the Romulans and Klingons kind of shared the cloaking technology and ships during the original series, which I thought was interesting. I don't know if you have any notes on that with your original series or any thoughts on that.
No, that's how I hear it too, is that somewhere along the lines they traded secrets, and for whatever reason that's in canon reason why they both have cloaking and why they have bird of prey, ships called bird of prey.
Yeah, kind of interesting. Another major thing about this movie is that we have a new person playing a key role. The role of Savick, which was played by Kirstie Alley previously in Wrath of Khan. She's now played by Robin Curtis in this film. And apparently, Kirstie Alley's contract for Wrath of Khan kind of came up and they couldn't negotiate a new one. So they went with another actor, which I think is interesting. But I thought Robin Curtis stepped in and did a great job as Savick.
I think so too. I think they're a little bit different Saviks. I think
Mhm.
Kirstie Alley was more of they had the idea that she might be half Romulan, even though that's not in canon. That is kind of how her character was made, and
Mhm.
why you have her crying in Wrath of Khan. But it seems like when they wrote Robin Curtis, they went full Vulcan with her Savick.
Mhm. And there's actually a scene where she's praying while Spock is going through the ending, Spock and McCoy, which is interesting. Um, and another aspect about Savick that is not well known. So one of the stories I always tell that I love, and this is the reason why I love Star Trek Six, is that before Star Trek Six came out, about 5 or 6 months, on the school bus, I met somebody who said he had a copy of the script. And I was like, get out of here. No, you don't. And so he brings it the next day, and I start looking at it and I'm reading it. I take it home. He lets me take it home to my dad. My dad looks at it and he's like, "Oh my gosh, this is a real thing. This is a real studio script." And in that script, I distinctly remember that instead of Valeris, it was supposed to be Savick, which is interesting, which would have added a whole nother twist to her character from these two films to that. But I'm kind of glad they added Valeris and changed it from Savick, because I really like her in this film and I like her as a character, and I didn't want her to become a bad guy.
You don't want to see Savick corrupted after
No.
after the roles that she played in these two movies, and I agree completely.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much that Savick does as a nurturer, as a leader, as just, and we'll talk about her character in this because I think she's fantastic. That she does that
Yeah.
really expands her character and her role in this movie, which I really love. Um, yeah, we had already talked about Nicholas Meyer not wanting to come back. Nichelle Nichols was initially upset with how little she had in the movie script until she actually read it, and really loved what she had to do, what she got to do in this. And I thought that was interesting, but I do wish she had one or two other scenes in this. But her one scene in Space Dock is amazing. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Um, Another actor came out of retirement for this, Dame Judith Anderson. She was 87 years old when she appeared as the Vulcan High Priestess in the film, and she came out of retirement after being away from movies for 14 years. And her nephew encouraged her to take the role, which I think is just amazing that she came out and did this. That's a tribute to her. Which,
Absolutely.
yeah. Another note that I have is about Christopher Lloyd, who another actor that I just loved, especially as Doc Brown. And you can see behind me one of my favorite movies of all time is Back to the Future. And uh, he said in an interview that this role and Judge Doom from Who Framed Roger Rabbit were two of his really villainous roles, and he said they were the most fun because he got to do something different rather than be the hero, be the crazy guy or the nutty guy.
He
And
was
so,
incredible. So Mark Okrand took the Klingon language created by James Doohan, and when Christopher Lloyd was so into being Klingon that he realized when he got the Klingon wrong, and he said, "I did that. I did the Klingon wrong." And Nimoy asked Mark Okrand, who did the language, whether or not he did the Klingon wrong, and he said, "No, that sounded fine." So the actual guy who does the language, the Klingon language, changed the grammar so that what Christopher Lloyd did was right after all. And so I think that was incredible teamwork by both of them.
that's awesome. I didn't know that. That's a cool fact. I mean, and Christopher Lloyd had a lot of uh, Klingon language lines in this movie. I mean, throughout, I would say maybe at least half or more of his lines are in Klingon, which
This
is,
is the movie that takes Klingon from just some noises to a real language.
oh yeah, oh yeah. I mean, especially the first scene when we see him in, and he's getting the access to the Genesis device, and it's all in Klingon, which was fantastic. Another
Yes, yeah,
interesting,
yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
It's a real maturing of the Klingons from what they were as villains in the original series, and how they evolved from that to Day of the Dove, and to here where they have honor, and they you can understand their motivations a little more clearly.
Oh yeah, that, and I think their makeup improved dramatically from the original series too.
Absolutely.
Um, so another aspect about this movie that is really cool that we will see later on in Star Trek Six was the Excelsior was supposed to be in Star Trek Two, The Wrath of Khan, and there was always a plot line or an idea that it would become Sulu's ship, which I thought was interesting because I always thought it was odd that okay, Sulu's still the helmsman of the Enterprise, but Chekhov got promoted and was like second command of another ship. Uh, why is it Sulu getting some recognition here? which was interesting. But I'm glad they finally gave him a ship in Star Trek Six and made him a captain because I
Yes.
he was very much a worthy character to have that.
Yes. Yes, he definitely still had a role in this movie, but the idea was to make him a captain, especially since the design of the Excelsior was the person who designed it. I forget the name of the person, but he said, "What would it be who if Japanese created a starship, what would it look like?"
Oh
And so
yeah,
that
absolutely.
it was specifically made for Sulu.
Yeah, yeah, you can see it kind of in the rounded architecture and the almost samurai like shape of the saucer section. So yeah, very cool. Um, Another note on here that we'll talk about when we talk about the scene, but there was a scene after spoiler alert after David dies where Kirk stumbles in his chair after hearing about the death of his son. That was all improvised by William Shatner, who was told by Leonard Nimoy to do whatever in reaction to the loss of his son. And Shatner never told the audience, never told anybody whether he meant to miss the chair or not, but he missed it going backwards, and it just added a realistic element of shock to that scene and to his character. And I think that was just brilliant acting and in the moment for him in that scene, which I thought was really cool.
Yes, it absolutely breaks your heart to watch him fall apart like that because you're not used to seeing Kirk respond that way, and he has lost everything just as he found it.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, Star Trek Two, he finally, at the very end of the movie, father and son embrace each other. I mean, um, and he's finally got a family, and he gets taken away from him. And then my final note that I have was Grace Lee Whitney, who played Ensign Rand, or Yeoman Rand in the original series, shows up in this movie, which I thought it was a great cameo. I wish there was a little bit more of her around in some of the Star Trek movies, but she's in Space Dock, and we got a photo of her when we go through the slides. Um,
Oh, yeah, definitely. Always good to see her.
mhm.
If she had a bigger role, that would be great. I agree.
Yeah. But Jill, did you have any other notes or anything else about this movie that you wanted to touch on that I might have missed in my notes?
Oh, yeah, I probably do. Let me see. Let me see if there's anything interesting. I do have a lot of notes. Maybe not everything is worth talking about.
Mhm.
Mm, I think you covered the big ones.
Oh yeah, yeah. There were some small ones that I was just like, well, it was interesting, but it wasn't a something that grabbed me at the time.
Mhm.
But I think another aspect about this movie that makes it wonderful is I love the score. The score on this movie and the music is beautiful. And one of the greatest parts of the movie is at the very end when they play the original theme of Star
Mhm.
Trek, which I think was just a beautiful touch.
Absolutely. It's a gorgeous score and it uses music from previous movies to tie into this score
Hmm.
as it should.
Yeah, and I think it ties them together really well. And I thought Leonard Nimoy's direction was good, but I mean to be honest, and it kind of get into themes. This movie's really Kirk's film. I think he has such a commanding presence of it, and it's mainly about him and everybody following him. I think really when it comes down to it, this touches on one of the greatest themes of Star Trek, and I think this is one of the themes that makes Star Trek one of the best series ever. One of the reasons why I love the original series. I do love the Next Generation as well, and I thought there were aspects of this, but I don't think that the relationships were as strong. But the friendships are a key theme of Star Trek, and it's particularly Spock, Kirk, and McCoy. That those three and their friendship carried a lot of the original series and carried these movies. And I think it's a huge aspect of this movie and a huge aspect of why Star Trek is so great. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Star Trek has always been where we have Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, Kirk being the soul and Spock being the brain, and McCoy is, the heart, and
Mhm.
it's it's a great and they've always been a fantastic team, and, eh oh, I don't know how to say it, but
They've always worked well together on there, and I
mhm.
always thought it was just how you brought it together. And I thought the unification that we just saw, that 10-minute video that I thought captured a portion of that, but I also thought it was missing McCoy, which was kind of disappointing. But I think
Well,
this,
sure, McCoy's got Spock's Katra, so
oh yeah,
he's extremely important.
yeah. And so in this film, it's just so interesting because he's got Spock's Katra, and he's suffering because he's facing dual personalities, and some of that is fun. I wish they would have had more time to play with it a little bit more. Um, and you'll see what I mean when I pull up the slides. But you know, Kirk risks everything to save them both. He risks his command. He risks his ship. He risks his son. He risks everything all his principles, everything. And he doesn't care what will happen to him. He only cares about his friends and saving his friends. And, at the very end, when Sarek is talking to him and pointing this out to him, and he says, if I hadn't done this, I would have lost my soul, which is just exactly what you mentioned, the soul, the heart, and the brains. And it's just amazing to see that, and to understand that, and understand how close these guys were, and how important it is, and how real and true friendship is. And I
It's true,
think,
you're right, he even says that Spock has an eternal soul that's his responsibility.
mhm, yeah, exactly. And yeah, he says it to the admiral. He's like, hey, this is my responsibility, which is just, it's fantastic. And I think that aspect is missing in a lot of films today, where you don't build up a relationship or build up a friendship like this. And I think that's what we're sorely missing in television and movies today, in our culture right now.
What I
Uh,
really appreciate that they even flip that line, "The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few," but
mhm,
in this case, Kirk says, "The needs of the one outweigh the needs of the many,"
mhm,
and that happens at the end when he's talking to Spock, when Spock's fresh and brand new.
mhm.
He's been brought back,
Absolutely.
and
And
you get the lines repeated from Wrath of Khan to end it. "A
yeah,
ship
absolutely.
out of danger?"
Hmm. Yep, exactly. And yeah, I think that's important, because here's the other aspect is, in that set of lines, he says, "Don't you remember you saved us all? You saved us. Now we have to save you." You know.
And here's the other trivia that I just remembered. Jim, your name is Jim. That
Mhm.
line was the first line written, and then Harv Bennett wrote backwards from that. He knew
Really, I
that's
didn't
where
know
he was
that.
gonna
That's
end.
cool. Wow, I think Harv Bennett nailed the script. I thought this was an amazing script. I love that aspect. Well, as we're talking about that, let's bring on the slides here, and we'll show you a little bit more of this wonderful movie. Of course, this is the poster, and really, I got the slides in order. So let's feel free to talk about some of these scenes and some of our favorite scenes. Of course, the movie does open with showing scenes from Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, which I thought was really good, to set the stage of where they are at present. Um, the other aspect, that one character that I think is missing, that I wish they would have just mentioned what happened to her, Carol Marcus. I, I just wondered what happened to her. Where'd she go? You know, did you ever?
That's that's a good point. Yeah, so yeah, she was missing because they couldn't get her contract together.
hmm Yeah, and I don't know what kind of role she would have played in this because I don't know how she would play off Kirk wanting to go after Spock with this. I don't know how that would have worked. So I think you could have had her maybe in Starfleet arguing for Genesis or something like that. So you know, maybe had a scene where Kirk's trying to figure out what's going on and she can't tell him anything because she's sworn to secrecy. You know, so
Yeah, I guess they just decided to implant everything that Carol did into David. And so the problem with that is then David bears the whole responsibility of Genesis when she was also there.
oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So we see the Enterprise, and then we get shots of all the crew members that are still around, which I thought was beautiful and great. And each one of them had their moments on the right at the beginning. Um, and then we get to see the greatness of Christopher Lloyd, and I like this scene. I think it's kind of cool. You have a ship that's kind of cloak and dagger. We're at the rendezvous. Where is he? He's been waiting here for some time. And he finally decloaks. And I don't know about you, but if I were flying that space freighter and a Klingon bird of prey appeared right above me, I would have been, okay, what are we dealing with here? you know?
Yeah, yeah, that's just a little merchant ship. And
Yeah,
just cowering under a giant bird of prey definitely
yeah,
definitely would be intimidating.
yeah,
And the
and
merchant, he just wants his money, but but he doesn't see this coming.
yeah, and basically she gives the information. I thought it was interesting. You've seen this, and she's like, of course, and he's like, unfortunate. And right then and there, she knows that she's dead. You know?
Even though she's basically his lover, this is
Yeah,
you saw too much, and
yeah,
for the good of the empire, you have to go. And
yeah,
she accepts it.
yeah. I mean, that was wild to me, but it just shows, how ruthless, but also kind of there's a code, and you got to abide by the code. So, and then here's a scene with Space Dock, which I thought was really cool, and there's Yeoman Rand right here, which I thought was cool. And I like the little scenes like this where you see the people watching the ship coming
Yeah,
in.
she doesn't have any lines, but she gets to watch. She's there.
Yeah, and it looks like she's got a higher rank too, as well. So,
Oh, right, she's a commander now.
yeah. So, really cool. She's really worked her way up. And then this whole
Yeah.
scene with McCoy, and this is where he's in Spock's quarters, and this is the interesting aspect that they played up a little bit, but I wish they would have played up a little bit more. Where because he's got Spock's Katra, there are times when he sounds like Spock, and he's
Yes.
telling Jim to take him to Mount
The Leia.
Belay on Vulcan. Yeah,
And,
and
and
then
and he says in Spock's voice, "Remember."
yes, and then we get the Genesis planet, and there's the Grissom. It's an interesting
Yes,
design.
yes, and this is great because it they tell you what Genesis is again to remind you because it's been a couple years since the last movie.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then, of course, we get to see his gun collection and Kirk's home on Earth. And then Sarek interrupts, which is I found this interesting. He's thinking that Kirk was the one, but they go and they review the footage, and it turns out that McCoy was the one that in place of Spock's Katra. And then here's the discovery of there's nobody in the torpedo tube, and then you've got these weird, gross little alien creatures. Uh,
Yeah, they evolved really quickly from those little things.
oh yeah, it almost felt like something from an Indiana Jones film. And then we have this scene with the bar, and I love this scene. I think this scene's hilarious. So McCoy is going to go charter a ship, and uh, we see little tribbles right here. They're not eating all of the bar, which is interesting. And I don't know about you, but when I saw this as a kid, there's this holographic airplane game they're playing right here, and I thought that was so cool. And I'm sitting there going, "We don't even have this today. What's going on? Come
No,
on, technology!"
you think we should have this type of holographic technology by now.
Yeah. And so, what's great about this scene also is more than McCoy playing off the Spock. So, the uh, the 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 waitress here asks McCoy, "Hey, do you want your usual poison?" And he's like, "To order poison in a bar is not logical,"
Hmm.
which was funny.
Right.
And then I don't know, this guy was weird. I thought he was a cool looking alien, but he just was weird with his backwards way of talking.
It's planet forbidden.
Yes. And then Federation security comes up and is telling McCoy to keep his voice down. And then originally, from what I read, is that originally there was supposed to be a big bar fight, and they had to kind of scrap it because it just there were aspects of it that didn't work. But here's yet another thing for Spock that McCoy tries to do. He tries to Vulcan nerve pinch the security guard, and it
Yes.
doesn't
I,
work.
I appreciate that it doesn't work, despite the fact that he does have Spock's soul within him. He does not have the physicality to carry it out.
Yes, and was the only other person that we see that's a non-Vulcan that can do it is Data, right?
Data can do it. Yeah.
Which that's one of my favorite scenes in the Next Generation episode Unification. Is like, oh, pretty good. So we see Kirk going to break him out because he's going to go steal the Enterprise, and this is one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie. He goes into McCoy's chamber and he says, "Quick, how many fingers am I holding up?" And he gives
Yeah.
him a Vulcan salute. And I thought that was hilarious. And then McCoy's like, "That's not funny." And then he tells him why he needs a shot, and it's because he's suffering from a Vulcan mind melt. And you've got McCoy with the classic line, "That green-blooded son of a bitch. It's his revenge for all the arguments that he's lost." And it just, again, this is playing to the relationship between all three of them. And this is what the banter was like on the original series that made it so great. It's one of the many aspects of it.
Y-
But yeah, I love that. And then Sulu gets his moment here. What about this scene, Jill?
Yeah. So this is the moment where he has to throw a security guard around, and who had previously called him Tiny. So he tells him, "Don't call me Tiny."
Yeah.
And I don't think actually I heard somewhere that George Takei actually doesn't really like the scene that much, or didn't at some point, but I do.
Yeah, I
And then
read that he didn't like it at first, but when he saw the audience react to that line, he warmed up to it.
that sounds right. That sounds right. But definitely, this is something special because they're having to fight against other Federation officers or
Mhm,
Starfleet officers to rescue McCoy and go and find Spock. So
mhm.
this is where, they kind of have to brush up against the rules to do what's right for each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you gotta take some risks and you gotta be crafty. So, and then this scene is Uhura's main scene in here. I wish she got a little bit more, as I've said before, but she really shines here. Um, she's got that young ensign who's complaining about the station, and he's like, "Well, you're close to retirement, and you could choose anywhere to go. Why'd you choose here?" And then Admiral Kirk's here, and he's like, he's the one that wants to get out and explore the thing, and she's like, this is fantasy, and she pulls the phaser on him and puts him in the closet, which is just awesome.
Yes. Oh, I'll have Mr. Adventure eating out of my hand, sir.
Yeah, which is awesome. And then I love the line that she gives, and she goes, and oh, and Admiral, all my hopes, which is so
Oh,
Uhura,
yes.
which just she's the other thing that I always loved about her character is I love that she was the translator, but I also love that there were moments where she has tender moments on the show, and she has so many good moments in these different movies. And I miss Nichelle Nichols. I thought she was a wonderful actress. She did a great job on this. Her character was iconic in TV and in movies, and I've always liked her character. I always thought that she was just a solid character.
Yes, absolutely. Again, I need to step away for just a second.
Okay. Okay, so moving along, Jill's gonna step away for just a moment, and I'll continue with the stealing of the Enterprise here. So you have Kirk and everybody on the Enterprise. Scotty's rigged it, and the interesting aspect is Scotty's rigged it so that Kirk and McCoy can fly it off on their own. But when Kirk says, "Hey, none of you guys have to be here, have to go with us. I had something I have to do," each one of them decides to stay. And I think that just shows the tightness of this command crew. It shows the special friendships that they all have, which is another aspect that we mentioned. And it also shows how important Kirk's leadership is and how important Spock really is to all these people, too. And I think it ties the show really together in the movie together because it brings these people together. So here we go. They steal the Enterprise, and one of the scenes I didn't show was Mr. Scott had to open the space doors, and there's a yellow alert in space dock, and the other captains, how do you get a yellow alert in space dock? Somebody's stealing the Enterprise, and it's just humorous. And so the Excelsior is going to go catch him, and he goes, Kirk, if you do this, you'll never sit in the captain's chair again. And there's no response. And so Enterprise goes to warp, and then they go to transwarp drive, and you hear the almost like a car backfiring, and almost like something out of gas. And they look at the computer and, good morning, Captain. So, and you find out that Scotty rigged it, which I thought was a really funny, hilarious moment of Scotty rigging the other ship that he was asked to really bring up to speed so it could do better than the Enterprise, as if anything could.
Yeah, he even gets a souvenir from him.
Yep,
He took
and
he,
yeah. Go ahead. What do you take?
uh oh, I don't know exactly. What did he take? Whatever he took it out of her main transwarp computer drive.
Yeah, and he hands them to McCoy. Here you go, Doctor, from one surgeon to another, which I thought
The
was
more
hilarious.
they overthink the plumbing, the easier it is to stop up the drain.
Yep. And then we have the Klingons coming to Genesis, and Grissom's not a warship. It's a scientific vessel, and the Klingons just vaporize it in a shocking.
Esteban is extra safe and careful, and actually, that's kind of what saves Savick because they won't bring her back up to the ship. They leave
Yeah,
him down there.
absolutely. And the reality is he wanted prisoners and didn't want to destroy the whole ship. The gunner got a little bit greedy, and so this is what a Klingon disruptor can do. So, and then many of the young,
Right.
yeah, young Spocks,
And
and then
well,
go ahead.
and you say that, but that's what yeah, okay, you're talking about when Kruge vaporizes the gunner for
Mother, yeah,
destroying the Grissom
yeah,
because he didn't listen. He said he wanted prisoners.
yeah, exactly. So, and that's another point of Klingon honor. Um, anyway, the Klingons go to the ship, and yeah, as you said these things evolved, um, which is interesting. I thought that the interesting part about this is that the Klingons were gonna, shoot the worm-like thing, and the captain's like, "No, I want to face this thing," which is kind of cool. And so Klingon to want to just face an enemy with your bare hands and fight.
Definitely.
And then um, I wish that I could have gotten a better shot of this, but there's a beautiful shot with all three of the Klingons overlooking kind of a sunset. And it's just a really, really great shot in this movie. I love that aspect about the cinematography in this film. Some of the shots on the planet are just phenomenal, just with the weather changes and the different aspects of light, which I think are really, really good. Um, we look at some more of the Genesis planet. And they find a cave, and I'm like sitting there going, "Wow, this just reminds me of Dagobah, Star Wars." And then Savick really, she's no nonsense. She confronts David about the Genesis device because she knows that there's something wrong. And this is where David tells her that he kind of cheated and used some substance to make things go faster that really caused it to go out of whack. And then you have the
Right,
famous.
right. The proto matter. There was
Mhm,
David and probably Carol knew about it too. There was an unstable substance
mhm,
which was banned universally, but David used it anyway.
mhm. Yep, and she alludes to him being like Kirk for doing that. Um, and then you have the interesting uh Spock in his teen early 20 years experiencing Pon Far for the first time, which was interesting. And ironically, I think in other canon later on, doesn't Spock marry Savick and they have a kid?
It's not that's not in canon, but that it was they did think about including that at one point, but it got cut from the actual movies.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why they drop off Savick in Star Trek 4 before they
Mhm.
go off on their adventure.
Interesting. Yeah. And then we had the Enterprise showing up and the Klingons cloak. Uh, the the group gets captured.
Was this the picture you wanted?
Ooh, do you have it? Here, let me add it to stage. Oh yeah. Oh wow. Look at that. That's beautiful. That is a great shot. Yeah, I think that's one of the things about this movie that I think was just awesome was just the day and night aspect and the different changes in the planet of Genesis. I thought that was fantastic and great.
Yeah, yeah. When I heard you said you wanted a picture, I have slides from all over the movie if you need
Oh
something
wow, you
specific.
do. Yeah, oh wow, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Cool. All right. So, they get captured. They Kirk versus the Klingons, and they get the better of them with a couple of shots, which I thought was really cool. Um, but unfortunately, the Enterprise is not suited for battle, and Scotty's like, "I didn't think we are going to take us into battle, Captain." So, and then I thought this was really brilliant tactically by the Klingon commander. He doesn't fall for Kirk's trap here. Kirk knows that the Enterprise is not equipped to really take on the bird of prey, and he sees right through Kirk's bluff, which didn't happen very often on the original series at all. Um, and so he basically threatens to kill one of the prisoners, and the Klingons about to kill Savick, and David steps in, and he gets killed. And here's the scene where Kirk misses the chair, which I think is very spot on for that aspect. I mean, he just lost his son. Um, you Klingon bastard, you killed my son. You know.
They were
Uh,
gonna kill Savik, but David intervened and made it
mhm.
him instead, so he sacrificed himself.
Yep. And they also said in one of the notes that I read that it was kind of David's punishment for cheating and making Genesis, which I'm glad they didn't say that in the movie. I'm glad I read that later on because I didn't ever want to think of his death that way. I wanted to think of his death as he another aspect of self-sacrifice in this movie, which is another underlying theme. He sacrificed himself to save Spock and Savick,
He
which
does say I went wrong with Genesis, but that doesn't mean that the two things are necessarily connected.
oh, exactly. I mean, it doesn't mean he deserved to die for that. Um, but yeah, he does that, and then Kirk recovers really well from this because he's still got to be a tactical commander and save his people. And this was just ironic and iconic. The self destruct sequence. We've seen it threatened and seen it in some of the series, but until now, they've never actually fully gone through with it. Um, which this is really awesome what they do. They set the sequence, they beam down the planet, the Klingons beam on board the ship, which I love this scene. He's like, there's nobody on the bridge except the computer is talking. And then the Klingon commander's like, what is it saying? And he understands it. He goes,
It's
four,
counting.
yeah, 4, 3, get out of there, get out of there. And then the ship just blows up, and kind of a gut punch for all of us Star Trek fans. Of like, the Enterprise is gone, and
Know why they wrote that in there. Yeah, no, and it is. It's heartbreaking, and it's because everybody knows it's a search for Spock, so we're gonna get Spock back. It's
mhm.
just automatic. So they included a death in this movie, and that's the death of one of the most important characters in Star Trek, and that is the Enterprise.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I thought this is kind of gruesome, but I thought the beautiful shot right here with it over the sunset and just kind of almost like a meteorite. It's just really pretty. And then the iconic line, "My God, Bones, what have I done?" And of course, McCoy reassuring Kirk what you had to do. Um, you know, turn a life and death situation into your advantage. Basically, cheating death.
Yeah,
You
turn death into a fighting chance to live.
know. Yep.
And Star Trek 3 just breaks my heart in all the right ways in this scene.
Oh yeah, because me too. I remember as a kid, I was so taken aback by the ship being destroyed because that was such an iconic ship and iconic character. You're right. It absolutely is a character, but it also shows that hey, this aspect of Kirk to save his friends and his aspect of friendship is more important than his ship. And to save his
Making sure
crew.
his crew yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's just self-sacrifice, and it's just that's what I love about this film. That's what makes this film great. And so we go and they uh they kill the Klingon, and Spock is rapidly aging, just like the planet. And then I love the lines he said, like, well, as we say on Earth, c'est la vie. And he's just taunting the Klingon commander. The Klingon commander comes down and he agrees to beam up everybody except for Spock and Kirk, and in order to get Genesis. And Kirk's trying to talk sense into him. Look around you, it's a failure. It's everything's dying. And then they get into this fight, and it's just back and forth. And I thought the fight was really great. There's a point where the Klingon commander ends up on a ledge, and Kirk just jumps out at him, and they're fighting on this ledge. And then Kirk's able to knock him off. And I thought this was interesting that, he's hanging on the ledge, and Kirk goes, give me your hand. Kirk is still trying to reach out and have a meaningful, peaceful, resolution to this Klingon commander who's killed his son, who's done all this other stuff, and yet Kirk's still trying to save him, or still trying to be the bigger man. And then he tries to drag Kirk down, and then Kirk says one of my favorite lines and favorite scenes in this movie. I love this scene when I was a kid. I love it today. It still makes me feel like I did when I watched it in the theater. I have had enough of you. And he kicks him in the face and knocks him into the lava. I love that. I thought that was so cool. Thoughts on the fight scene? Oh,
I was grabbing that for you.
oh, cool. Here we go. You got it. Let's bring that up.
I have had enough of you!
I love that scene. Yep. Yep. That's one of my absolute favorites. So, thoughts on the fight scene? What do you think?
I think what's very important about that scene is that Kirk did not go straight for trying to toss him off the ledge. He was actually trying to help
Mm-hmm.
Courage at some point, but then Courage, of course, tried to drag him down, and that was it. That was it. Kirk had had enough. He tried. He tried to do the right thing and save him, but
Oh yeah.
that it wasn't allowed, and he wouldn't allow for that mercy, because that is what Kirk does. He will have mercy against you, but like how he wouldn't kill the Gorn. But in this case, Courage Courage just was gonna take him down, was gonna keep him away from his friends, and so he had to do what he had to do to
Mm-hmm.
survive.
Absolutely. Yep. And then we see him fall, and then we see the destruction of the planet, which is just amazing. But and then he Kirk even speaks Klingon. Moles, Joe, Ichu, which I thought was great.
Yeah, and that works.
Yep. So he beams him up, and I don't know. Do you know who plays Moles?
Oh, no, who plays Maltz?
John Larroquette from Night Court fame, Dan Fielding himself.
Oh,
That's John
awesome.
Larroquette right here, which is pretty cool. I didn't know that until later on, but yeah, that I thought that was really cool that John Larroquette was in this and he plays Moles. And I love how Kirk is like you know he's like kill me, and he's like nah, I'll kill you later, and and they figure out how to run the ship, and Chekhov, take the prisoner to the back. You said you would kill me. I lied. So I love that. And then figuring out how to run the Klingon ship. That or nothing. Well, go, Mr. Sulu. And then the
Yeah,
destruction.
Scotty figures that out pretty quick,
Yep. Yep.
and so does Sulu.
Yep. And then they fly it off, and then just the destruction of Genesis, and the heartfelt line, "Goodbye, David." Um, and then landing on Vulcan was really cool. I like that sequence. Um, yeah, here's him taking
They
the prisoner.
did they did this whole sequence on Vulcan in one day at Occidental College in LA.
Really cool.
Yeah,
Awesome. I didn't know that.
they just added some big steps and some bright orange lights, and there's
Oh, wow.
Vulcans.
Yeah. And then here's where we have them bringing Spock down, and you get a hurrah. And then I always like this, that they have it set up, and they ask McCoy. They realize that, hey, you're human. This could be very dangerous, and McCoy accepts the danger, and then he grimaces. Now they tell me, you know.
Hell of a time to ask.
Yeah, hell of a time to ask. Yeah. Um, and so they have this mind melting. And I thought also with Sarek, he says my logic is impaired where my son is concerned. Um, that's interesting because really, in the original series, we saw how you know kind of almost cold and just logical Sarek is, but throughout this movie, you see a different aspect of his character. That's just another take that adds more to that character, and I think really brings it full forward when you see him again in Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Yes, it's definitely a big deal for a Vulcan to admit any kind of feelings whatsoever, and there's definitely a reason why Sarek chose to marry human uh, Amanda.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting that the whole mind meld scene is interesting. And we see this gorgeous shot right here of Vulcan they made, um, and then the temple. And then this is the scene we're talking about where it kind of wraps up and sums up the movie and sums up the heart and soul of Star Trek, where, Sarek confronts Kirk and he's like, you know, he's thanking him, but he's saying at personal risk, you risked your ship, your son. And Kirk's like, it's something I had to do. If I hadn't done it, I would have risked my soul, which I thought was a very key line in this movie. I think it, as if we needed any more motivation from Kirk, but I think it really sums up the friendship and the aspect of Kirk in this. So, and then, of course, we get the reveal, and he looks at all the different the different crewmates, which I thought this was kind of cool. He looks at every single one of them. That's why I grabbed these. And then the famous line still that we were talking about earlier that we both love, where he's trying to remember. And go ahead.
Oh, right. Well, because Spock says, "Why would you do this?" And Kirk says, "Because the needs of the one outweigh the needs of the many."
Mm-hmm.
And Spock repeats his lines from Wrath of Khan: "I have been and ever shall be your friend." And
Mm-hmm.
Kirk says, "Yeah, yes, Spock." Seeing that Spock's remembering, he's remembering himself. And
Mm-hmm.
Spock repeats another Wrath of Khan line: "The ship out of danger." And Kirk says, "You saved the ship. You saved us all. Don't you remember?" And then we get to the line, "Jim, your name is Jim." And let's actually, I have a lot of clips from this movie. I think
Oh
that
yeah,
one's
let's
worth.
grab that one. Yeah, let's go. Let's grab that one. I love that one.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll upload that, and just it does take me a moment.
Yeah, but I love the aspect of this. I mean, they reverse the line from Khan. Um, he starts to remember who he is with the ship out of danger, which is great. And I think also you saved us all. You know, um,
Your
and then
name is Jim.
which I just love that line. Oh, that's such a beautiful line. And you mentioned another aspect of that is that's where the writer started, right?
Yes, yes. They knew where they wanted to end, and they worked backwards from there, which is a writing trick that a lot of people use to start at the end and work backwards and fill
Yeah,
in the blanks.
which I thought was great. Jim, your name is Jim, which is just fantastic. And then the other great part is everybody comes to really see him, and you have the ending. And then the cool thing is they have the latest score from Star Trek 1, 2, and now 3 kind of molded together. And as they start to end, it fades into the music from the original series, which is fantastic. And for some reason, my last slide got left off, but the great part about this movie at the very end, it shows, and the adventure continues, um, which I thought was really good. Now, I'm disappointed that they didn't have, uh, you know, them going back or any kind of trial or anything, but I thought this was a perfect place to end the movie. It's a shorter runtime than Wrath of Khan and Star Trek One, which I think was okay. I thought that there's a tightness to this movie that I think kept the intensity up, kept your attention, and it just culminates right in this last scene, and it's perfect. But any final thoughts on this film, Jill?
Oh, it's a wonderful film. I loved it very much, and we had to get Spock back, and this was a very necessary film, which makes it part of a great trilogy. If you watch Wrath of Khan, then you watch Search for Spock, then you can complete the trilogy with my favorite movie, Star Trek 4,
Mm-hmm.
The Voyage Home.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a wonderful story. Like you say, it is about friendship and Kirk dealing with Spock's death and finding him and realizing that Spock can return, and that was more than he could have ever hoped for. He thought he was just going to bring his body back home, and that Genesis provided that miracle, but also it was destroyed. That was There's some interesting science fiction aspects to Genesis that we didn't quite get into that I kind of go a little nuts about, but we'll leave that for another time.
Oh
But I
yeah,
I,
yeah,
I really I really love this movie for so many reasons.
yeah. And I
And
think honestly, the other aspect of this is I think you needed to kind of end the Genesis story so that it didn't kind of you have Genesis and you think about the device and everything else and what happened with Khan, and you're like sitting there going, well, in the back of my mind, they just created a whole big nuclear war weapon, kind of a doomsday device. How do we resolve this and get kind of rid of it so we don't have to bring it back up,
yeah,
So
exactly. And Kirk doesn't want to deal with all of that violence anyway. And that's what this basically is an enormous weapon. And that's what the Klingons latch onto. They don't latch onto the idea that it can create life, but that it can destroy it.
hmm. And the other aspect about this movie with the Klingons, we mentioned a lot of their culture is in this. The other aspect was there's an aspect of fear that they had because he mentions, hey, they'll be colonizing and you'll see flags of the Federation all over because there actually are a lot of dead planets out there that don't really support life, and Genesis is supposed to help support the life, and they were
Mhm.
fearful that the Federation would try and conquer.
Right. And
So
they would encroach in their area. That would definitely put a little uh, uh, yeah, they definitely didn't want that for sure.
yeah, put a damper on
And
them.
Cruge was definitely he was I don't know, was Cruge just on his own kind of mission? At some point, it just seemed like he was doing something
Well,
else.
I think his main mission was to gather data about Genesis, and then part of the data was to maybe bring back prisoners, because he seemed to emphasize that prisoners, scientists, or people that could tell them more about Genesis, and I think that was kind of his mission. But I think he got a little bit greedy in the sense that he wanted the actual torpedo, he wanted the weapon, you know.
Yes, that's what it is. That's what happened. Thank you.
Yeah. So that's my thoughts on it. But anyway, wrapping up this wonderful video. Thank you so much, Jill, for being on. Um, Plug away. Tell us more about your channel and where people can find you. And I'll definitely put a link to your channel on the
Oh,
video.
yes, thank you. Yes, I do have a channel where I do talk about Star Trek just like this and lots of other science fiction. On December 17th, I'm going to start a Twilight Zone series, which should be going on for quite a while. And so that's gonna start and it'll be on Tuesdays at 11 a.m. like it normally is, and then I also have another 11 a.m. Central Time show on Tuesdays and Fridays. But then I also have some gaming streams and some hangout streams at other times. Never sure when those are going to happen. But
Yeah.
thank you so much. Thank you so much, Rob, for having me on. I know my voice was a little gravelly because I've been sick, but I hope I helped a little bit with this video.
Oh, you did. Thank you so much for being on. I love what you added to it. And guys, check out Anti-Derivative Jill's channel. It's wonderful. It's great. And wow, the Twilight Zone. Oh my goodness. Just real quick on the Twilight Zone. Are there any favorite episodes you want to mention here real quick?
Oh, there are. I don't know them by name yet. This is why I'm going in depth on them. But Eye of the Beholder, I think one of them, and the one where the guy drops his glasses and he was going to be able to
Oh
read
yeah,
for eternity, and time at last.
Time at Last. That's my mom's favorite. One of my favorites has always been The Howling Man, which is kind of a scary episode with where they capture the devil, and the one guy doesn't believe them, and he lets him out. So it's kind of unique and kind of cool. So, but yeah, that check out that stream. That's gonna be awesome.
Yeah. And then
Uh,
there's that time that Will Robinson sends everybody to the cornfields.
oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. So the Twilight Zone. What a great science fiction show. You know, Rod Serling was such an amazing writer. And I wish it hadn't ended when it did. And I know they tried to revive it in various forms. I don't think it's ever lived up to the original. I mean, those stories were just incredible. Um, I love the original.
Rod Serling really spoke to the heart of humanity, and just kind of a little bit similarly to Gene Roddenberry.
Oh yeah,
And
absolutely. I would put them right up there with some of the greater writers in that era. Yeah, absolutely. Um, anyway, well, hey, folks, next on my channel, we're coming up in December of 2024. So I've got my Christmas lights up, so there'll be a video on that. And then Wednesday night's coming up, and I'll be on Doomcock's channel doing pop culture breakdown. And in the month of December, around the 22nd, we're going to do another live stream where we talk about music. And this month, for December, we're doing the top 40 Christmas songs of all time. So that should be a fun stream on Sunday, December 22nd. So stay tuned. But folks, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you again, Jill, for being on. And we'll see you on the next one, folks. Bye.
bye.